In our stunningly beautiful world of image and media hyperproliferation, certain recurring themes and images seem to pervade. Everyone is familiar with them from commercial and stock photography, the perspiring beverage bottle crashing through ice, the porcelain-skinned woman splashing water on her face, or the storied farmer's hands sifting through bags of freshly roasted, aromatic coffee beans. It doesn't matter in what part of the world the duty-free shop you walk through is, its cosmetics and skincare displays will be the same shot, the same woman, the same feeling. Produce markets throughout the world feature the same images of giant rolling tomatoes, freshly baked bread, and zesty cut lemons. We process images with our brains. Brains are evolved to aid organisms in navigating their physical and social environments in order to better their chances of reproductive success. Feelings and emotions are evolved to signal that something is important to an organism. From that perspective, one could assume that images that are successful at evoking feelings do so because their content is somehow relevant to us evolutionarily. Commercial imagery therefore often plays on our evolved predilections. Succulent foods, wealth, family ties, and sex are all hyper-represented themes in commercial imagery. These subjects directly tap into our evolved motivators. Central to feeling, images are mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are neurons that fire both when an animal acts or observes that same action being performed by others. So when one sees someone experiencing or displaying actions and emotions, the same neurons for those actions and emotions light up in them. This is one way that images affect us. I would guess that the reason the image of someone splashing water in their face is so ubiquitous is because of the combined effect of mirror neurons, plus something called the mammalian diving reflex, which refers to a host of physiological effects, such as a 10 to 25% decrease in heart rate that sets on immediately after getting cold water on your face. Thus, when you merely see an image of water being splashed on someone's face, your heart rate slows down. Since slowing of the heart rate is associated with relaxation, the image induces a sensation of relaxation, a pleasurable feeling that will pull more sails and therefore act as an attractor in image solution space. I have no right to feel jealous. Acts of emotion management are not simply private acts. They're used in exchanges under the guidance of feeling rules. Feeling rules are standards used in emotional conversation to determine what is rightly owed and owing in the currency of feeling. We feel, but what is feeling? I would define feeling, like emotion, as a sense, like the sense of hearing or sight. In a general way, we experience it when bodily sensations are joined with what we see or imagine. Like the sense of hearing, emotion communicates information. It has, as Freud said of anxiety, a signal function. From feeling, we discover our own viewpoint on the world. We often say that we try to feel, but how can we do this? Feelings, I suggest, are not stored inside us, and they're not independent of acts of management. Both the act of getting in touch with feeling and the act of trying to feel may become part of the process that makes the thing we get in touch with, or the thing we manage, into a feeling or emotion. If this is so, what we think of as intrinsic to feeling or emotion may have always been shaped to social form and put to civic use.
He hated it. Said he wanted this stuff.
100 years ago, a new theory about human nature was put forward by Sigmund Freud. He had discovered, he said, primitive sexual and aggressive forces hidden deep inside the minds of all human beings. Forces which, if not controlled, led individuals and societies to chaos and destruction. This series is about how those in power have used Freud's theories to try and control the dangerous crowd in an age of mass democracy. At the heart of the story is not just Sigmund Freud, but other members of the Freud family. This episode is about Freud's American nephew, Edward Bernays. Bernays is almost completely unknown today, but his influence on the 20th century was nearly as great as his uncle's. Because Bernays was the first person to take Freud's ideas about human beings and use them to manipulate the masses. He showed American corporations for the first time how they could make people want things they didn't need by linking mass-produced goods to their unconscious desires. Out of this would come a new political idea of how to control the masses. By satisfying people's inner selfish desires, one made them happy and thus docile. It was the start of the all-consuming self, which has come to dominate our world today. At that time, Freud's young nephew, Edward Bernays, was working as a press agent in America. His main client was the world-famous opera singer Caruso, who was touring the United States. Bernays' parents had emigrated to America 20 years before, but he kept in touch with his uncle and joined him for holidays in the Alps. But Bernays was now about to return to Europe for a very different reason. On the night that Caruso opened in Toledo, Ohio, America announced it was entering the war against Germany and Austria. As a part of the war effort, the US government set up a Committee on Public Information, and Bernays was employed to promote America's war aims in the press. The President, Woodrow Wilson, had announced that the United States would fight not to restore the old empires, but to bring democracy to all of Europe. And Bernays proved extremely skillful in promoting this idea, both at home and abroad. And at the end of the war, he was asked to accompany the President to the Paris Peace Conference.
Then, to my surprise, they asked me to go over with Woodrow Wilson to the peace conference. And at the age of 26, I was in Paris for the entire time of the peace conference that was held in the suburb of Paris, and we worked to make the world safe for democracy. That was a big slogan.
Wilson's reception in Paris astounded Bernays and the other American propagandists. Their propaganda had portrayed Wilson as a liberator of the people, a man who would create a new world in which the individual would be free. They had made him a hero of the masses. And as he watched the crowd surge around Wilson, Bernays began to wonder whether it would be possible to do the same type of mass persuasion, but in peacetime.
When I came back to the United States, I decided that if you could use propaganda for war, you could certainly use it for peace. And propaganda got to be a bad word because of the Germans using it. So what I did was to try to find some other words. So we found the word Council on Public Relations.
Bernays returned to New York and set up as a public relations counsel in a small office off Broadway. It was the first time the term had ever been used. Since the end of the 19th century, America had become a mass industrial society, with millions clustered together in the cities. Bernays was determined to find a way to manage and alter the way these new crowds thought and felt. To do this, he turned to the writings of his uncle Sigmund. While in Paris, Bernays had sent his uncle a gift of some Havana cigars. In return, Freud had sent him a copy of his General Introduction to Psychoanalysis. Bernays read it, and the picture of hidden irrational forces inside human beings fascinated him. He wondered whether he might make money by manipulating the unconscious.
And so Eddie began to formulate this idea that you had to look at things that would play to people's irrational emotions. And you
Bernays set out to experiment with the minds of the popular classes. His most dramatic experiment was to persuade women to smoke. At that time, there was a taboo against women smoking, and one of his early clients, George Hill, the president of the American Tobacco Corporation, asked Bernays to find a way of breaking it.
He said, we're losing half of our market because men have invoked a taboo against women smoking in public. Can you do anything about that? I said, let me think about it. And then I said, have I your permission to see a psychoanalyst to find out what cigarettes mean to women? He said, what'll it cost? So I called up Dr. Brill, A.A. Brill, who was a leading psychoanalyst in New York at that time.
How come you didn't call your uncle? Why didn't you call your uncle?
Because he was in Vienna.
A.A. Brill was one of the first psychoanalysts in America, and for a large fee he told Bernays that cigarettes were a symbol of the penis and of male sexual power. He told Bernays that if he could find a way to connect cigarettes with the idea of challenging male power, then women would smoke, because then they would have their own penises. Every year, New York held an Easter Day parade to which thousands came, and Bernays decided to stage an event there. He persuaded a group of rich debutantes to hide cigarettes under their clothes. Then they should join the parade, and at a given signal from him, they were to light up the cigarettes dramatically. Bernays then informed the press that he had heard that a group of suffragettes were preparing to protest by lighting up what they called torches of freedom.
And so the next day, this was not just in all of the New York papers, it was across the United States and around the world. And from that point forward, the sale of cigarettes to women began to rise. He had made them socially acceptable with a single symbolic act.
What Bernays had created was the idea that if a woman smoked, it made her more powerful and independent, an idea that still persists today.
Embrace me, my sweet embrace.
It made him realize that it was possible to persuade people to behave irrationally if you link products to their emotional desires and feelings. The idea that smoking actually made women freer was completely irrational, but it made them feel more independent. It meant that irrelevant objects could become powerful emotional symbols of how you wanted to be seen by others.
The child is amoral. To us, the Papuan is also amoral. The Papuan slaughters his enemies and devours them. He is no criminal. If, however, the modern man slaughters and devours somebody, he is a criminal or a degenerate. The Papuan tattoos his skin, his boat, his oar, in short, everything that is within his reach. He is no criminal. The modern man who tattoos himself is a criminal or a degenerate. There are prisons where 80% of the inmates bear tattoos. Those who are tattooed but are not imprisoned are latent criminals or degenerate aristocrats. If a tattooed person dies at liberty, it is only that he died a few years before he committed a murder. Some occupations were found to be easier to carry out when wearing little or nothing. and both sailors and miners often went naked. And though it is true that they are naked, yet their manners are decorous and praiseworthy. Well, the epidemic of ornament is recognized by the state and is subsidized with government money. I, however, consider that to be regressive. I will not subscribe to the argument that ornament increases the pleasure of a life of a cultivated person, or the argument which covers itself with the words, "But if the ornament is beautiful." To me and to all the cultivated people, ornament does not increase the pleasures of life. If I want to eat a piece of gingerbread, I would choose one that is completely plain and not a piece which represents a baby in arms of a horse rider, a piece which is covered over and over again with decoration. The man of the 15th century would not understand me, but modern people will. The supporter of ornament believes that the urge for simplicity is equivalent to self-denial. The absence of ornament has raised the other arts to unknown heights. Beethoven's symphonies would not have been written by a man who walked around in silk, velvet, and lace. The person who runs around in a velvet suit is no artist, but a buffoon or merely a decorator. Die Welt als vom Design verseucht zu begreifen, ist selbst Ausdruck eines totalisierenden Anspruchs, diese Welt eben als Ganze begreifen zu wollen. Der Kapitalismus erscheint hier als Agent dieser Ganzheit und die Ästhetisierung als seine schlagendste Waffe. Nicht nur genügt ein Blick auf die längst in den Zentren angekommenen Peripherien dieser Welt, um die These der totalen Ästhetisierung in Frage zu stellen. In der Argumentationsstruktur selbst reproduziert sich die alte gnostische Weltsicht von der totalen Verkommenheit der irdischen Welt, die nur in Bezug auf ein wahres inneres Feuer überwunden werden kann. Gerade darin gehen jedoch jene Spielräume verloren, die Foster inhaltlich fordert. Design in Crime wirft also eine Menge theoretischer, historischer und letztlich auch kunstkritischer Probleme auf, insbesondere was das Verständnis wichtiger Segmente zeitgenössischer Kunst betrifft. Sich so ungebrochen auf Adolf Loos zu berufen, ist nicht nur wegen der geschlechterpolitischen Implikationen von dessen Rhetorik problematisch, sondern auch, weil diese Rhetorik, nicht anders als die von Louis Sullivan, selbst zutiefst in evolutionistisch-biologistischen Vorstellungen vom puren Funktionieren verstrickt ist. Die funktionsästhetische Argumentation ist generell noch viel zu wenig in ihren sozialdarwinistischen Implikationen erforscht, gerade weil die kritische Tradition es lange versäumt hat, sich mit den historisch gewordenen Voraussetzungen und Implikationen der eigenen Rhetorik auseinanderzusetzen. Die Kehrseite der Kritik, jener zuweilen bizarre ideologische Raum, in dessen Namen sie geführt wird, ist nicht mehr auszublenden, will Kritik ihrem Namen heute noch gerecht werden. Peter Bürgers empathischer Begriff der Lebenspraxis, den die Avantgarde angeblich anpeilt, wäre ein weiteres Beispiel für solche Vorstellungen, in denen Entdifferenzierung und der Verlust der Spielräume als anstrebenswertes Ziel kritischer Praxis erscheint. The ultimate form of design is, however, the design of the subject. The problems of design are only adequately addressed if the subject is asked how it wants to manifest itself, what form it wants to give itself, and how it wants to present itself to the gaze of the other. This question was first raised with appropriate equity in the early 20th century, after Nietzsche diagnosed God's death. With the death of God, design became the medium of the soul, the revelation of the subject hidden inside the human body. Thus design took on an ethical dimension it had not had previously. In design, ethics became aesthetics. It became form. Where religion once was, design has emerged. The modern subject now has a new obligation, the obligation to self-design, an aesthetic presentation as ethical subject. The body takes on the form of the soul becomes the body. All things become heavenly. Heaven becomes earthly, material. Modernism becomes absolute. Every citizen of the contemporary world still has to take ethical, aesthetic, and political responsibility for his or her self-design. In a society in which design has taken over the function of religion, self-design becomes a creed. By designing oneself and one's environment in a certain way, one declares one's faith in certain values, attitudes, programs, and ideologies. In accordance with this creed, one is judged by society, and this judgment can certainly be negative, and even threaten the life and well-being of the person concerned. The debate over headscarves demonstrates the political force of design. In order to understand that this is primarily a debate about design, it suffices to imagine that Prada or Gucci has begun to design headscarves. In such a case, deciding between the headscarf as a symbol of Islamic convictions and the headscarf as a commercial brand becomes an extremely difficult aesthetic and political task. Design cannot therefore be analyzed exclusively within the context of the economy of commodities. One could just as soon speak of suicide design, for example, in the case of suicide attacks, which are well known to be staged according to strict aesthetic rules. How to create a productive, effective assembly, team, C, communication, regularly, shared meaning within a group, high performance assembly be updated LOL, give something back, emotion and affection, A, make this your life, part of your body, hard work to achieve goals, everyday ritual, T, trust, C, control, over, out, own, life. Please say A. Bring your control to a bigger group. H. Happiness leads to success. Love what you're doing. Affection is needed for that.
It seemed like a lot of people today, and that has been the case, we're here to talk about the positive aspects of habit and sort of taking as a premise that habit is a good thing, and certainly that is the case in many instances. I was actually gratified to hear, though, that many of the speakers who preceded me did flag these instances of sort of too much engagement, right? So that's what I want to talk about today, this, as Nir said, the dark side of habit. Here's a quote, actually, from Nir. For some reason, it's not, clicker is just not working. Oh, I got it. If used for good, writes our host Nir, habit design can enhance lives with entertaining and even helpful routines, if used for evil, habits can quickly turn into wasteful addictions. Nir told you a little about what my book is about, and here is a sort of dark and brooding cover that evokes this more sort of evil side of technology. And this was based on, I spent years of research, starting with the research on interior design, then moving to the games, even looking at the seats, and then finally inside the machine to the algorithms. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that today. Slot machines are commonly misperceived by legislators, by the general public, and by journalists as being a light form of gambling. The reason that is that we think of cute little old ladies with blue hair playing these. We associate them with the retired. Also, we associate them with children because they really resemble youth arcade games. And they're easy to play. They also have relatively low stakes. We've been seeing this trend toward lower and lower stakes, which actually is linked to larger and larger revenue, but penny machines bring in the largest profits today. In fact, despite this seeming lightness, today's gambling machines are widely considered by researchers to be the most potent, if you will, form of gambling there is. The particular addictiveness of these machines can be broken down, if you want to really simplify it, into three aspects: rapid, solitary, and continuous. And I'll talk a little bit more in a moment about the different features that contribute to this solitary, rapid, continuous formula. But first I want to focus a little bit as an anthropologist, and this is really what got me into this topic, on the experience that gamblers describe. This term, the zone, is one that they use. I just kept hearing this term over and over again. We often use that term to talk about sports or creativity. They're using it in a different kind of way. They're describing this dissociative trance-like state in which they're so focused on playing the game that social demands, daily worries, even sometimes a sense of bodily existence fades away. You can't see from where you're sitting, but here we have that these special ergonomic chairs increase time on device. This particular maker goes on to, here's a quote, eliminate hard, sharp edges coming in contact with the main arteries of the legs, which causes circulation to be cut and the legs to fall asleep, and goes on to say this is particularly important for elderly gamblers. Moving from the chair to the machine itself, ergonomics continues to be important. At the Global Gaming Expo, the moderator of a panel called Building a Better Mousetrap remarked, ergonomics makes the slot player more productive. A game designer told me, you really want the person to be able to just slide the bills right in there as easily as possible, really not raise their arms at all.
Yeah, but man, that was good. How good? Like, there's no past or future anymore. The pure present is an ungraspable advance of the past devouring the future. In truth, all sensation is already memory. Nike doesn't actually own any machines or equipment at all. The company only develops footwear concepts and designs and, in a sense, even the philosophy of a certain product. All other production, including the creative stage of advertising and marketing, is handled by partner companies and license holders. Important to smile. Don't forget smile. The admonition came from the speaker in the front of the room, a crew-cut pilot in his early 50s, speaking in a southern drawl. Now, girls, I want you to go out there and really smile. Your smile is your biggest asset. I want you to go out there and use it. Smile, really lay it on. For today, you don't have to be filthy rich to be projected, not only as designer, but as designed. Whether the product in question is your home or your business, your sagging phase, designer surgery, or your lagging personality, designer drugs, your historical memory, designer museums, or your DNA future, designer children. For lifestyle is a success story. Bigger and bigger clients, first academic and art institutions, then entertainment and other corporations, come to Mao in search of image design, that is to say, brand equity. Bruce Mao Design, he states candidly, has become known for producing identity and channeling attention for business value. Fair enough, it is a business after all, but Mao should have left things there. In this environment, he goes on, the only way to build real equity is to add value, to wrap intelligence and culture around the product. The apparent product, the object attached to the transaction, is not the actual product at all. The real product has become culture and intelligence. A world of qualities without man has arisen, of experiences without the person who experiences them, and it almost looks as though, ideally, private experience is a thing of the past, and that the friendly burden of personal responsibility is to dissolve into a system of formulas of possible meanings. Probably the dissolution of the anthropocentric point of view, which for such a long time considered man to be at the center of the universe, but which has been fading for centuries, has finally arrived at the eye itself. I'm feeling lots of things recently. Me too. Today it became December, and I was not ready for that. It's January now. February now. Digitization of effect. In contrast to Western fluidity and rapid change, the epic socialist master narrative expressed itself through a slow flow of time. Kerry James Marshall declares that the image is everything. Nobody is better aware of the relationship between the image and mastery of history than Kerry James. He's a great painter in a high-stakes battle, and he knows it. And it is true, Kerry James has cracked the image code of Western painting. He predicts that any culture that cannot do the same, recreate itself visually through the dominant channels, will be exterminated. But this presents an impasse. One is sure to lose if one can only operate within the terms of assessment set by the Western image. Once backed into this corner, is it possible to overcome such an advantage? How do you play against the opponent who's sure to win? The Pink Panthers, who are still active today, understand what kind of commodity the West has to offer. Accordingly, they take the value away from a thing by renaming it. For instance, diamonds are renamed glass. The Panthers steal a piece of glass, intending to cut it up and redistribute it. In my conversation with one of the members, he stated that they found the act of cutting intensely satisfying. One diamond, or piece of glass, can sometimes be recut into 4 or 5 pieces. This allows more people to have it, democratizing the precious object in a minor way, undermining its former exclusivity in the hands of the ultra-rich. Sometimes a panther will keep a piece of glass, embedding it into an engagement ring that is given to a beloved. The panther's motivation is not greed. Initially, their motivation was necessity. They were unable to survive otherwise in a criminalized state that was supported and perpetuated both by Western Europe and the United States. The group's members, individually, never made more than a standard middle-class salary earner in the West. They often returned to their home cities to launder the cash by buying real estate. After the first wave of heists, they bought Audis, Porsche sunglasses, designer sweatpants, Nike shoes, etc. Today's ornament can be seen as a superlative and essential part of this total design. By adding emotion, experience, and fantasy to the list of things that can be designed, today's ornament does not just seem to aim at the design of life, but at the design of human beings themselves. Whether literal ornament designs or dresses the human body, or expresses its status, today's ornament of emotions dresses the inner self. Today's ornament, clearly grounded in a general desire and obligation to develop our inner selves, and in today's experience economy, could therefore be defined as a way to design or achieve a certain intrinsic modus, a state of mind, or fashion. The experiences we have affect who we are, what we can accomplish, and where we are going, and we increasingly ask companies to stage experiences that change us. Human beings have always sought out new and exciting experiences to learn and grow, develop and improve, mend and reform. But as the world progresses further into the experience economy, much that was previously obtained through non-economic activity will increasingly be found in the domain of commerce. That represents a significant change. It means that to obtain what we once sought for free, we now pay a fee.